This is Chris Dyer, Director of the Museum in Georgetown, and today I will be interviewing Mr. Carl Doering on behalf of the Georgetown Public Library's Oral History Project. The goal of this project is to collect recorded oral histories of members of the Georgetown community who are involved in the community during the desegregation of public schools. These oral histories will be included in the library's permanent collection. Today's date is Friday, January 23, 2009. I am interviewing Mr. Doering at his home in Georgetown at 705 Country Club Road. The time is currently 11:05. And thanks for sitting down with me today. And I guess we will just, introduce yourself, and could you spell your name?
I am Carl Doering, Doering.
Okay. And do you go by any nicknames or anything like that? Or
All my life, growing up, I was Brother Doering.
Brother Doering.
I had an older brother, and he called me brother. So everybody in town knew me as Brother Doering.
Well, that's great. And what is your date of birth?
August the 14th, 1924.
Okay. Well, I guess that...
And I spelled Carl with a C.
C, there you go, C-A-R-L. And I'm C-H-R-I-S-D-Y-E-R, a good Irish name. Okay, well, we'll get started with the questions here. How long have you lived in Williamson County?
I've lived in Georgetown all my life. In fact, I was born about 5 blocks from the courthouse.
Oh, that's pretty neat. Right in Georgetown, so you're a long-time native.
Right in Georgetown. And I have been here now for 84 plus years.
84 years, wow. Okay, well, what neighborhood or what area did you live during the 40s, 50s, and 60s in Georgetown? I'm not real familiar with the different neighborhoods that were in Georgetown.
Well, of course, I was born 5 blocks from the courthouse, and that was southwest, which was about halfway between Austin Avenue and the West Railroad.
Okay.
We had 2 railroads in town.
Right. And was it an ethnically diverse neighborhood, or what was the kind of makeup of the neighborhood?
The West Railroad actually separated the whites and the blacks.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. Let's see. Like I mentioned earlier, this is just to kind of get us set up for what I hope you'll let me do a series of interviews with you. Describe your educational background.
I went to a private elementary school at Wahlberg, Zion Lutheran.
Okay, you went to Zion.
And then I went to Concordia, and then I went to Arlington State University.
And what did you major in? What was your focus in Concordia and further on?
Well, my parents wanted me to be a parochial school teacher or a pastor, but I didn't have good enough memory to suit them, so I changed that later on.
What
went to agriculture.
Agriculture.
Yeah.
Great. And this is really I'm taking a couple of notes here. It's really interesting information for future interviews. How did you went through school, and I guess you came back. How were you involved in the community? Did you start out I know you were politically involved, but how were you involved through the church? Could you describe that a little bit and how you...
Well, I was involved in many ways. I grew up in Georgetown, and Georgetown back then was rather small. It was in the 4,000 or 5,000 population back when I was a child. And I was involved with the blacks all my life. In fact, I remember a black lady rocking me. Her name was Sally Jefferson. And I called her Aunt Sally. And she requested when she died that she be buried in a white dress. And my mother gave her a white dress when she died, and she was buried in a white dress. And then my father had a cotton gin right next to the railroad track, and there was a black lady by the name of Gertrude City that had a little grocery store across the track. And I remember taking my nickels over there and buying candy. And I remember I either forgot my nickel or I lost my nickel. But anyway, Gertrude gave me a piece of candy anyway.
I'm familiar with some of the cities, Albert, and I guess that's out east. But that's interesting. So you were living in that neighborhood. You're really close to right next to the black community, and you mentioned, I guess, how were you involved in the church and the community? Were you involved in the church or city council or anything like that?
Well, going back to Joe City, which was Gertrude's husband, he was one of my best friends all my life. His home was right next to my dad's cotton gin.
Okay.
And he made his living with a truck and a tractor with a saw on it. He would cut wood and then sell it during the winter. And then sometimes would take his truck all the way to New Mexico and bring back baled alfalfa hay. And in fact, Joe had me be his executor of his estate when he died. And he had a home and 2 rent houses. And he deeded all of his property to his church.
Okay.
So I didn't have a whole lot to do. And then I belonged to the Optimist Club. I started Little League baseball in Georgetown. And I had the title of Commissioner of Baseball in Georgetown. I was on the Housing Authority for several years and vice chairman for 2 years. And we have a wonderful housing authority in Georgetown. It's been there a long time. And then I was on the city council for 8 years, and I was mayor for 2 years. And then I was chairman of the building committee at Christ Lutheran Church when we built an entirely new church, Sunday school and gym on Luther Drive, which is off of Leander Road.
So you were definitely very involved in the community, and I assume that you were involved before integration of Georgetown schools even became a possibility or an issue, or you were involved with the community before that. I know that you were on. I was familiar with your city council term, but a lot of people might not realize that. Can you put that in context? How were you involved during the time of integration? What were you city council? Were you mayor? What were you doing at that time?
During integration?
Yes, sir.
It was in the late 50s, and of course my tractor business was right next to the track, next to the cotton gin. So I had I heard a lot of talk every day down there from the blacks in the 50s. Before I was elected to the school board, people would stop by all the time and let me know. I remember a delegation probably in 1957 from the Carver school going before the school board, and they were wanting a new school. But that school board took no action. And then I recall a year later, they did the same thing. They went, and there was 2 or 3 other members on the board, and they went before the board, but that board took no action. Then in 1960, I recall the school board